the possibility that overall in this draft, there could be 9 NFL starting quarterbacks, which is just ridiculous. And I know that sounds like hard to believe, but then when he says it's a once in 5 years draft, and if you want to go to Caleb Williams grades significantly higher than Trevor Lawrence at this point, like all this kind of nerdy stuff. All it to say, I still feel like number 3 pick, definitely quarterback. The more I hear, the more I'm like, just stay there. Take the risk. Take a swing on one of these guys.
Yeah, and that's how I feel. And that's how I felt all along. And even if it wasn't a once every 5 or 10 years quarterback draft, I would say you're up there. There's 3 of them. Get one of them. That's been my stance. That will remain my stance. We all can prioritize those 3 however we want. And I continue to go May, Williams, Daniels. But they should take one. And I still feel that way, whether I hear it from Jim Nagy or Burt Breer or whomever. The other side of the coin, though, Mego.
I'm sorry. Let me double down on this because I have the quote right in front of me. He said it's probably a once-in-a-decade kind of class. Yeah. Once in a decade.
Yeah. And, some Patriots fans want to take Joe Alt. Or Marvin Harrison, who quote-unquote can't miss. And the more I read about him, the more I think he can kind of miss. It has nothing to do with him not working out at the combine. But I don't want a 6'4" outside receiver. That's not what I want. Not at number 3. I want a receiver who can move around the formation. I like Malik Neighbors, but it's a separate argument for a separate time. The idea that he can't miss is stupid. But Jeremy Fowler's the other side of this coin. And he said yesterday on SportsCenter, I'm looking at teams to move up in the draft for a quarterback. And there, I think, are 3 of them, maybe 4, who you can look at that would move up. The Giants are definitely one. I think the Falcons are another debatable one. I think the Vikings and Raiders are the other 2. Okay, so you're talking 6, 8, 11, and 13, I believe. He said somebody's going to move up, and I'm looking at the Raiders. That's a team that could be a mover and a shaker around draft time because of Antonio Pierce. He has an affinity for Jaden Daniels. They were together at Arizona State. He said that's a connection, and it's strong enough for them to move up from 13 to 3, potentially New England spot. He said that would be tough, but I think that's on their radar at least. So let's play that out. It goes Williams 1 to Chicago. It goes Drake May number 2 to Washington. You're on the board. You can take Jaden Daniels, or you can move down to pick 13, where now you're picking up future first-round picks, meaning, 13 this year, next year's first rounder, probably second and third rounders this year, maybe another first rounder down the line. Like to move down 10 spots, you're going to be accumulating a lot of draft capital. I know Tom Curran likes this approach. I know there are others that like this approach. I'm staying and taking the quarterback. I know you're staying and taking the quarterback. But I'm curious what Patriots fans would do. Is that enticing? The Justin Jefferson trade continues to come up. His name remains out there. He's available. Let me pull this up for you. I saw this from AI bot, Dove Clayman, yesterday on Twitter. He is, quote, tweeting Charlie Walters, who is a Vikings beat reporter. He says there's steam the Vikings could make Justin Jefferson available via trade. So if the Vikings are looking to move up, would you take Jefferson and something to move back and pass on someone like Jaden Daniels? If the Raiders are moving up, will you take a haul to pass on someone like Jaden Daniels? I would not. But I'm curious where the fans are at. You can jump in. 617-779-7937, along with our big question of the day. Up now, at Jones and Mego, what interests you the most about the Combine? Do you think Jefferson will really move?
I don't.
I don't either.
I think it's maybe in a different, market, especially with free agency. There's so many guys who could move. Even somebody like T. Higgins could get a tag and trade because they also have to pay Jamar Chase over in Cincinnati. So you got Mike Evans out there. We'll see what happens with Pittman Jr. There's just it's the opposite of what the wide receiver market was at this time last year, where Jacoby Myers was the sexiest free agent, and then you'd have 1 or 2 guys who are maybe going to get traded. I just don't think it's advantageous for him.
No, and I was reading Florio over the weekend. He made a compelling case, and he's a Vikings fan, I think, like a childhood Vikings fan. But he made a compelling case that, the Vikings already weren't paying Justin Jefferson. Now the cap has gone up a crap load.
Yes.
Right? An extra, whatever it was, $10 million than what was projected. So if Jefferson's smart and his representation is smart, he's going to ask for even more money than he was already asking for. Hey, wait a minute. You told me to take this number. The cap's even higher than we thought. It'll probably be higher next year and the year after that. No. My number just went up. And so maybe that pushes the Vikings to make a deal. My guess is he stays. And even if he's available, I want the quarterback. What good is Justin Jefferson if you have the crap quarterbacks that were throwing to him last year after Cousins got hurt? It isn't any good to you.
Well, and by the way, Jones, we get one of these stories, I swear, every 3 or 4 days. This other wide receiver, Steph Diggs, if it's
T. Higgins
Justin
tag and
Jefferson,
trade,
T. Higgins tag and trade. I'm not sitting here saying that these great wide receivers are a dime a dozen because that's misconstruing it. But you certainly don't get these stories with quarterbacks.
No.
And there's a reason for that. And so when you say Marvin Harrison Jr. is a lock, he's going to be a generational talent. I want him. You can build everything else around him. You can get a quarterback like Bo Nix, or you can get somebody the next year. I don't really buy it. Like, these quarterbacks stay put most of the time, and these receivers are constantly jumping from, the Vikings to the Bills to the Raiders to Philly to Miami. Like, you can get receivers in other avenues.
Yeah, and Arcand is about the staunchest, hey, go get a quarterback or go get a receiver. You can find quarterbacks. But we even got him to bend the knee last week and say it's probably more likely you can find a receiver than a quarterback, which, thank you, Arcand. Very, very necessary to be here for that. He's off all week, by the way, here on Jones and Mego without Arcand on WEEI. Let's get to some phone calls. A lot of you waiting patiently. We'll start it off with our buddy Jonathan in Randolph. What's up, Jonathan?
Hey, guys. First thing, does Arcand have the most generous contract in radio at the moment? Because Daisy's taken off. Like, wow.
It's flex time. I would say it has more to do with that, Odyssey's policies than anything in his deal. But yes, go ahead.
I about had a conniption when I think it was Tom Curran said, trade down from 3 and then you can, get a bunch of picks and pick up, 3 or 4 starters. And I'm just like, Curran, you know better. To get 2 starters in one draft is a home run. The chances of getting, a whole, half a squad in one draft is impossible. And first and second of all, getting the guy at quarterback is more important than any starter at any other position or any combination of them. And if you screw up, if it's a bust, then you try again. That's what this latest Super Bowl taught everybody. You need the guy. You need a top elite, and you got to keep trying. I don't want to build from the middle, the outside, whatever. Start with the quarterback, and if it doesn't work, do it again.
Yeah, and are we sure that Wolf is going to hit on all these picks? It's like, let's try. We have no idea how he drafts. We have no clue.
We have no clue what his role was up until this point. We don't know how much Bill just came in and maybe stomped all over ideas that he had or that Matt Groh had, or if he was the one who was really wheeling and dealing for 90% of the picks. We don't know.
If they trade down, it's self-preservation. Mayo, Wolf.
Oh, yeah.
Whomever. It's just they're afraid.
It's scared.
But they're not just afraid to miss on the quarterback. I think that's where a lot of fans are at. They're afraid about their own NFL mortality, their job security. If they trade back, that will be my read on Mayo and Wolf. They're not ready. They're not ready and they're afraid. And so they move back. And I have no idea how he'll draft, but I did read Reese over the weekend. He passed along some comments from, who was this? Oh, Andrew Brandt, who worked with Elliott Wolf under Ron Wolf in the Packers program. He said, I believe before, during, and after my tenure in the Packer way, which in its simplest terms is no quick fixes, quote unquote. Slow and steady.
That's the Packer way?
Yes, apparently. It's different than the Patriot way. Which is, stab Bill Belichick in the back these days. Trust your scouting, trust your board, and almost mandate that your coaches will play young players. Again, this is Andrew Brandt to Mike Reese. So it's draft and develop, and then speaking to my end as a negotiator, once you identify those core players, get them under extension way before free agency.
Okay, well, I don't hate that part.
No, I don't hate it either, but that's the Packer way. Do we have any indication Elliott Wolf is going to do any of that? Is that the model that he's trying to follow? They haven't locked up anybody so far.
Yeah, that sounds to me like trade down, hoard picks, build it out over 3 or 4 years, and then hopefully a quarterback emerges from the ether. This is what bothers me about all of this, is that I don't disagree with how bad your roster is, particularly on offense, that you do need picks. You do need to build this out over a couple drafts. I absolutely agree. What bothers me is that then you have people in the know who are saying this is a once-in-a-decade draft for quarterbacks.
Right.
This is an amazing class. And you could have something like the Joe Burrow draft, and you're going, well, we need to hoard picks. We need to do this the Packer way over a couple of years, and a quarterback will come from somewhere.
It's easy to look at it and say, oh, well, what's one more year? Let's build and let's wait one more year. Well, it's already been 4 since Brady left. It's like it's not one more year. It's now going to be half a decade that you're asking people to wait. And that's annoying. By the way, Reese had this from Daniel Jeremiah as well. He said that the Patriots had previously been one of the more niche drafting teams in the league. And they would catch you off guard. I think of Cole Strange. That would be a niche pick, catching you off guard, drafting guys.
Niche?
Yeah, niche. Might not. You can pronounce
I think
both
you can
ways.
go either way.
Yeah, right. Correct. But
Just
I'm
making sure.
niche.
Niche. Ryan, can we have a ruling?
I think Mego's just looking for any opportunity to jump on anybody on this show.
Is that what it is?
Oh, wait, come
That's
on.
what it is. No,
What
that's
side
what
are
it
you
is.
on?
Yeah,
I'm on the niche side.
Thank you.
niche.
It's like a foreign word, right?
No, that's in the lacrosse world, in the highfalutin, high
right.
level money bags lacrosse world. That's how you
This is
pronounce
one of
it.
our niche plays.
Yes, exactly.
Lacrosse being a niche sport.
They were obsessed with fit and might take a guy 3 rounds before anybody else, Jeremiah says. He expects that to change with Elliott Wolf taking the leading role. Adding Wolf came up through the Green Bay system we were just referencing. So that's the best we have on Elliott Wolf, but nothing concrete. And we'll hear from him tomorrow, which Mego is looking forward to. Joe is in Randolph. Go ahead, Joe.
Okay, let me get you off the speaker.
Please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi, Joe.
I shouldn't
Everyone
worry
except Arkin.
too much. Yeah, I shouldn't worry too much about this year's draft because I think the Patriots are going to stink for the next 5 years. So they're going to be in the top tier for drafts for the next 6 years. And so they're going to be able to draft a plethora of good players.
Okay, so
That's the plan.
That's a nightmare scenario.
That's the
Sunny
plan.
disposition for a very terrible.
Here's
terrible
one thing.
thing.
Here's one thing I'll give the caller.
Top 5 drafts.
Here's one thing
Top
I'll give the caller.
5 drafts.
Because I feel like I've been guilty of saying it, and I hate stuff like this where everybody just says it and we assume it as fact. Daniel Jeremiah just said it. I've said it a bunch. Well, you're not going to be up here drafting again. I'm not so sure about that. You shouldn't be up here drafting again. You should not be drafting again at 3. But let's not pretend like that's impossible. With Gerard Mayo and his crappy coaching staff and Elliott Wolf completely unproven, ownership meddling, who knows how they're going to spend, and who knows how they're going to draft. We have no clue how they're going to draft. So I should not continue to peddle that line. Well, you're never going to be up this high again. No, they could be. Hopefully they're not. They shouldn't be, but they could be.
Doesn't this also, though, argue against trading back? Because let's say for the case of the Raiders that we just talked about, that the Raiders move up, and the Raiders could be good next year. They got more pieces than you do, and they love their coach there already.
Yeah.
So maybe the Raiders are good next year, and then you have a Raiders pick that isn't as high in the first round as maybe you would hope it would
No,
be.
100%.
Is that worth it?
100%. And so
What if they go get a quarterback and that quarterback ends up fitting in seamlessly, like a Jaden Daniels, and then you've got no quarterback and you've just got one pick that's somewhere low in the first round?
I think the Cardinals did that last year, right? Didn't the Cardinals trade with Houston? And they're like, oh, we'll have a super high pick next year. And it turns out Houston won a round in the playoffs. So that is a dangerous game to play if you just assume somebody else's pick, the Danny Ainge model, is going to be super high in the draft. 617-779-7937. What do you want the Patriots doing at 3? Would you entertain a trade back? Would you want a player like Justin Jefferson in return? These are things we've discussed in the past. Furthermore, what do you want to hear at the Combine tomorrow from Elliott Wolf, out of the Patriots, Gerard Mayo, getting a look at some of these quarterbacks? You can vote in our big question of the day up now at Jones and Mego.